You're listening to The Real Estate Ride. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy the show.
Here's the lie that they'll tell you on the infinite bank. If you've ever heard it before, the lie you'll see on social media is they'll say, you pay yourself back, right? You pay yourself back interest, right? Bold-faced lie. You do not pay yourself back interest. You pay the insurance company interest. You borrow from them. That's how it works. In fact, that's the magic. If it says, let's say you have $100,000 built up in cash in this tax-free savings account. Say you want to, you can actually withdraw $50,000, but what happens if we withdraw $50,000? You're now no longer earning interest, right? Because now that $50,000 goes down here. Just like if you pull out, $50,000 or $100,000 from your savings account, now you're making no interest, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But what if you could leave the $100,000 all in there paying you interest, especially if it's tax-free and it's paying you more than the bank does at 0.nothing%. You're making all this interest and you can still invest it too, making money in two places at once.
Right.
That's why I borrow from the insurance company. And yes, they'll charge me interest and I pay them back the interest. Yes. But it's a line of credit that you can pay back however, whenever you want. There's no monthly payments. The deadline for paying it back is your death.
Hey, we are excited to have our friend Chris Miles here with us today.
Yes, Chris, welcome. How are you today, man?
Man, I'm so awesome. Especially to have both of you here. It's like the perfect couple, right? I mean, it's just awesome.
Well, thanks.
We appreciate that greatly.
And I don't mean like the perfect couple in the Nicole Kidman sort of way, on Netflix. I know it's a new show. Anything but perfect. Nothing like that. No murder involved in this one.
Right. Exactly. Show is crazy. We started watching it, but
Yes.
but anyway, we are here to chat about real estate. So anybody got any ideas? No, I'm kidding.
No, we just wanted to interview Chris. Chris, you've been around for a little while, right?
Yeah, a little while.
When did you get started in real estate?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I bought my own home was 2003, right?
Okay.
And I actually got lucky because I was trying to get the loan and man, they would not give it to me. And I didn't know why. I found out because the mortgage company themselves were auditing the process with me because the previous person they did a loan for committed loan fraud was with the same company that I was employed with. So they said, well, let's pick on this guy to randomly choose an audit, but they would never tell me about it.
Goodness.
Almost cost us the whole deal on buying the property. Fortunately, we were able to extend it and get into the property, and actually the interest rate dropped by 0.6%. And get this, guys, I thought I was a genius because I was my own mortgage broker at the time too. I thought I was a genius because I actually got a 3.625 rate on that, and I thought like, oh my gosh, like because back then if you got like 6 or below was amazing, And I was like, I got 3.875 is what it was. And I was like, man, this is like almost nothing. This is like free interest rate. I'm so happy, right?
Right.
That was my first little starter home. I eventually converted it to a rental after that, a few years later. And so that's when I started doing real estate. But the fascinating thing is I was not a fan of real estate at first.
Yeah.
I was actually teaching people to not invest in real estate back in those days. Why? Because I dropped out of college to become a financial advisor.
Oh, there.
Right. AKA salesman in a suit. I did that for 4 years. And I love teaching people about money, but it was interesting because when I actually sat down and meet with my dad, and my dad, you got to understand, he's like the penny pinching saver, the guy that like you can never afford anything, right? We can't afford this. What do you think I am made of money? Money just growing trees, all those kind of things they teach, right?
Yeah.
And of course, and he taught me good stuff too, like your word is your bond and that kind of stuff. And as well, like, do what you say you're going to do. Don't do a half-a job, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But when it came to money, it was always scarce. And he would even tell me, he's like, Chris, I'm going to literally die working, my job. So I became a financial advisor thinking if I can learn more about money, maybe I can give him some of his life back. 4 years in, I sit down with him for the first time as a financial advisor. And I see his finances. He never would share his finances. He was always guarded. He always thought people were trying to take money away from him, right? Because again, he was so cheap. I mean, Dave Ramsey was like, I should learn from this guy. That's how cheap. And so anyways, I sit down with him and I look at all his finances. He paid off all of his debt, including his house in 18 years.
Wow.
He'd also stuffed money in his 401k, got the match and everything you always hear about, right? All that for decades. And then even after all that, I said, Dad, here's the deal. You're 61 years old. If you want to try to retire today, you better hope you die in about 5 or 6 years because that's when you're going to run out of money. Oh, that's not what I want to hear.
Right. That's
Yeah,
a
but what do I?
shocking statement, I'm sure.
Yeah, no. And he's like, okay, well, give me something else. And I thought through my mind, I was like, well, could we do this? Well, what if the market drops? What if this happens? And this is 2005, by the way. So it's good I did put him in the stock market. A couple of years later, it did drop. Like after he just lost money in Y2K, which is why he was far behind because he was recovering from the Y2K era, right?
Yes.
And I finally just told him, I was like, Dad, I don't know. You did everything right from what I teach as a financial advisor. And it became apparent just a few weeks later. I was talking to a friend of mine who I hired to be a financial advisor, but then quit on me to go to do this stupid thing called real estate investing.
How dare he?
How dare he?
And I thought, imagine those were.
I know. Go chase your dreams. Good luck. Once you go broke, come back and work for me, right? Well, I call him up just to see how he's doing. He's like, Chris, my life is great. He's like, my dad and I have partnered on some real estate deals, and we've now doubled his income as a professor at the local university.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait, you've only been doing this for 4 or 5 months. Come on, that's too good to be true, right? There's no way that's possible.
What's the catch, right?
What's the catch, right? And I'm not even arguing with him. Like, no, stocks are better. You can do more things with stocks. Like, because I was a stock trader too, an options trader, right? And because I'm like, I've seen the charts. Real estate only grows by about 4% a year average. It barely keeps up with inflation, but the stock market does 12% a year. Like, this is way better. And he finally just stops and he's like, Chris, how many of your clients are actually financially free where they don't worry about money, even in retirement? I was like, well, you had to throw that last part in. They all worry about money. They all worry about outliving their money. So I'd say none of them are that free. Okay, good job. I didn't expect you to be that honest, but okay. All right, how about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing
what you're teaching?
Investments, these mutual funds, right?
Yes.
And there's about 100 guys in my office and some women, mostly men, right? And as I thought about it, I was like, probably none. I don't think any of them could actually retire because there's guys working here since the late 1970s. So heck, there were guys working here since I was born, and they can retire. So like, what hope do I have? And he said, well, there's your problem. And so I started to be more open. He didn't believe me, but I was like, you tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so he's like, well, go get this Robert Kiyosaki book called Who Took My Money? It's a lesser known rich dad book. Basically, it's just that mutual funds suck, right?
Okay.
And then he's like, and financial advisors suck too in that one. So it was good. I could, take a little humble pie with that book.
Right.
And then I started listening to this AM talk radio show because this is pre-podcast days of these real estate investors doing the same strategy he was doing, which were mostly flips is what they were doing, right? They're doing a lot of flips. And then they were raising capital by paying people hard money. Get this, guys, the hard money they're paying was anywhere from like 2 to 5% a month. Monthly. Whoa. Because remember, this is 2005 going to 2006, right? So
everything.
Zero down real estate was easy. You can get credit partners, put nothing down. You just pay them a little extra. You can flip, basically equity mill the property. We pull out the equity from it, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I did with my first home. So in 2006, when I said my first real estate deal, I started to learn this stuff. I actually quit being a financial advisor. I said, I'll never teach about money again. I'll just do mortgages and I'll teach ballroom dancing on the side. Because I used to be one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers back in the day.
Well, that is so cool, man.
I'm tabling that for further discussion.
I know it's definitely. I'm not that today. I watch some of the videos on those reels and stuff now. I'm like, oh my gosh, those guys are amazing. Wow, it suck in comparison. Especially after now becoming a marathon runner. Now my hips don't move as well because they just go one way.
Yes,
yeah, a lot harder. But yeah, like I was doing that. That was my plan. But I just had to know what they knew, right? And so I started learning the strategy they were doing with mostly just flipping properties, finding equity investors, so to speak, right? Or property investors to buy it. They would pay them the mortgage payment plus a little bit on top so they make an infinite rate of return on their money, right? Because that credit partner would buy it with no money out of pocket, no money down, and then they get paid to use their credit. So it's kind of like this great marketing ploy was happening in 2006, especially here in the state of Utah. Like it was on billboards. I mean, it was that big of a deal. It wasn't just the sign of, hey, I'll teach you how to buy real estate and make $10,000 a month, on the freeway. It wasn't just like that. It was like, we're going to do freaking billboards. And so I did the same thing with my own starter home. I actually sold it to an investor, leased it back. And this is probably my most creative deal I've ever done, right? Leased it back. And then I subleased it to a renter. And so I was like, cool, I can strip out all the equity from my property and then still great rental income too. Moved into my little McMansion at the time, my little dream home and all that stuff. It was like a show home and stuff. Because, I'll tell you one thing I've learned about money is that it's just a magnifier of the soul. It doesn't make you any better or any worse. It just makes you more of who you already are.
Yeah.
Well, me, I had kind of a bad ego, right? And I mean, more of like a deflated lack of self-worth type of ego. So when I had more money, I was like, I'm going to buy that Mercedes. I'm going to show it off, let people lick my rims, and then buy the nice big house where people say, oh my gosh, how do you do it? How you retired at 28 years old? Because I was actually having enough passive income to actually retire when I was 28, almost
That's
29.
awesome.
And so they're like, how do you do it? And that's what I was trying to do. And of course, because people always ask you, that's why you decided to come out of retirement to teach people how to do it, right? So that's what I did at 7. So I mean, I'd stripped out the equity. I was doing all this creative stuff. I was thinking I was the best thing ever. And of course, with the pride comes the fall, which of course is 2007, right?
Right.
Yes.
I'm thinking, okay, if I can do the same thing with like $100,000 property, and if you can, turn around and make more money from this, what if I did it with bigger properties, right? What if we do bigger? Because if you have a 10% appreciation on a $500,000 home, that's 50,000 versus just a 10,000 on a $100,000 home. We should go big, right? That's why I should buy a bigger house for myself. I'll justify in my mind why I want to buy this thing that's got like a $5,600 a month, payment. Things like,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, plus $1,100 a month Mercedes payment to go with it.
Sure.
Now, the interesting, and of course, I came out of retirement to teach people how we do it, like how to get people out of the rat race. We created a company together to do that, and then of course, all of a sudden, I had all this equity trapped in my property. Now, as a mortgage broker as well, even though I was starting to phase out of that part of my business, I was like, if I ever need equity, I can always just cash it out whenever I want it, right? It's just like people are like, oh, I just get a home equity line of credit. That's my emergency fund, right? Which,
Yes.
total bull crap, because 2007 and 2008 came without warning. Because
Right.
when I tried to do a cash out refi, not even doing a HELOC, just a cash out refi, I went to the bank in July of 2007 and they said, you know what? We changed some rules. If you can get your score up just 2 more points, literally 2 points on your FICO score, we'll let you get the refi. Just keep it up and then we'll retry this in August.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. August rolls around. They said, oh, we just changed the rules again. Now you need to do X, Y, and Z. I don't remember the requirements, but I remember I jumped through a lot of hoops that seemed ridiculous.
Yep.
But I did it. I was like, I'll do whatever you guys say because I've got now 150 grand or so trapped in equity in this property. I want to get out.
Right.
September of 2007 rolls around. What do they tell me? Guess what? We no longer change some rules, finances. Well,
No longer even
that's when everything started to collapse, right? That's when I noticed the flippers first. Flippers were the first ones that feel it. They felt the heat right off the bat because they couldn't get people to qualify for loans anymore because they kept restricting it, right? They restricted to me over those couple months. They were doing the same thing to flippers trying to get credit partners. And of course, they started getting rid of 0% down, or 0% down type of loans, regardless of credit scores. No more negam loans like we used to do back in the day, or you could pay less than interest only, right? Because appreciation will cover it. It's fine. Pay up all in that firm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did
Scrabble too. Same ring. Just so you know. Same time frame. Yeah. Similar. Same time frame though is when it started happening to us too.
Oh, yeah. I was selling them even as a mortgage broker. So I was like, this is brilliant. You got a 4-pay option. You could pay less interest only. You could pay interest only. You could pay a 30-year or a 15-year mortgage payment.
Yeah.
I mean, so much flexibility. Do it.
Yeah. And did
say, yeah. By the way, my dad also did it because the only thing he had was a paid off house. So we're like, well, maybe he can cash out and go into real estate. Well, he did, but he put his money with some of these other partners, right? And of course, when they couldn't flip anymore, the horrible thing was they came back. They said, all right, here's the deal. We got $30,000 left. We got unfinished homes that we can't finish. Either we try to divvy it out to all of our friends and family, including my dad, with paying you almost nothing, or we take $10,000 each as partners and we go get jobs. So they chose the latter. They're like, we're just going to take the last remaining 30,000, split it up, and go get jobs. And I mean, my dad was like freaking out, especially because him and Jim are option arm, So he eventually paid off mortgage again, but I mean, it was just such a crazy, crazy time, and not at least because you've been around for a while too. But I mean, that's the thing I learned is that I was gambling on appreciation. And if anything, even when people tell me like, oh, the ARV is this much, I don't care. Like, I mean, I do, but I don't, right? Like, that's what I just do passive investing nowadays because I had to dig out of that hole. I went from millionaire to upside down millionaire. I was over $1 million in debt between my properties and the negative equity I had and loans and I racked up credit cards thinking it'll just be a little bit longer, then I'll get out of it. It's just a little bit longer. We'll
just a little bit longer and I'll pay it off. Right.
Plus, our business was failing because we were all focused on flippers. Our bacon, yes, either, right? So our business model was failing. Our real estate was failing. It was just a hot mess. It was like a perfect storm in the George Clooney sort of way where, you die in the end. Well, not the good perfect storm, right? So it was just a mess. And I did dig out of that hole. It took a lot. Like I had to change everything. We stopped teaching about passive income because I'd be a hypocrite to talk about passive income when I was back in the rat race again, And so I started teaching people how to get resourceful, how to find and free up cash flow and things like that. And that became a new business model that did work starting in 2008, 2009. Finally dug ourselves out of bankruptcy, but had to pay back a lot of debt, even though I had to negotiate some of it and whatnot. So I eventually did get out of the debt hole and got out of the rat race again by the end of 2016. But it was a clawing. I clawed my way out. It was ridiculously hard. And so I learned never ever put all my money in equity in a property because you never know if you can get it back out. That's why I do velocity banking strategies because it's not that it can't work. I just don't trust banks. I don't trust that it will always work. In the last couple of years, proof too. I mean, community had it. Still, the rates just skyrocket on you. I mean, it's the same thing that's happened to apartment syndicators, right? Like, it's the reason why even multifamily people are getting their hosed right now because all of a sudden they got these variable loans they don't know how to service because they were planning on low interest rates lasting forever, and things like that. So having liquid cash on hand, I think is so important. That's why I teach like infinite banking strategies as a alternative, just using the bank, right? I even like, passive income. I invest now with other operators, but I go for people that have kind of got gray hairs and got beat up like I did. Right. You've been around at least the last 12 to 15 years if I'm going to passively invest in people. Yeah. And so that's what I do now. I'm just hands off. I'm like, I don't want to do active stuff anymore. Not that I'm saying you can't, because you can make ridiculous amounts of money doing active investing. Right. I just realized that I just sucked at it. Even as a property manager, I was a horrible property manager. I would take every sob story and just not let them pay me, So that didn't work either. That's why my own investment property sucked, because pretty soon I was negative cash flow because I couldn't even rely on them paying me consistently and stuff. So, it's just, you really have to know what you're doing, and you have to be willing to set certain rules and just ask, like, what do I want my business to look like? What do I want my life to look like? And if it matches up, then go that way. But if it doesn't, then be careful.
Yeah, that's great, man. I've got a few little nuggets out of there that I wanted to touch on. The first one was that you said the gentleman who introduced you to real estate was doing JVs or joint ventures with people that had money. So that's actually a great way for new people to get started. Totally. If you have someone that has capital and you are actually getting mentored from someone, preferably if you're new, you are being mentored by someone so that you mitigate mistakes quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, that's true. He actually did have, like mentors he hired, like they charge tuition and whatnot. I always tell people that the most expensive thing you can do is ignorance, right? Is to be ignorant.
Exactly.
Because that's the life of hard knocks. That's why you have to learn to do it the expensive way. It's more expensive. It takes more time to get the results, where you can shortcut it so much faster. Yeah, it requires a little bit of money up front to hire somebody to do it the right way. But doing the right way is so much cheaper than doing it the wrong way. And that's what I did. I was trying to learn secondhand from him when he was getting the firsthand information. And even then it didn't work out well. It was a very market dependent strategy. They were really a one trick pony type of investor. Not like where you have investors that are like, hey, we can not only learn about how we can, flip this property, do renovations and whatnot, but I can also wholesale. By the way, I can also do a sub too. Oh, by the way, I can also do this, right? Or do that. Like you can maneuver with the markets, and they weren't taught that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's critical, that you're learning all of those tactics. And, like I mentioned, if someone's new and they don't have a lot of capital, that's like a great way for them to get started, is joint venture with someone that has capital or access to capital and create some sort of agreement where you do a deal split. That's one strategy that we actually teach our students.
And we still use that same strategy today too, so that we have people that want to invest in real estate passively, like you're talking about now. So instead of having them in the thick of the flip, then we just use their money to do the flip.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and you can work out creative deals like, hey, I'll pay you interest, or I'll pay you a percentage of the profit, whichever is greater. So we do a little combination there with our lenders to help them try to make some extra money. And if they do that option, we don't have any payments, right? Then we can actually do multiple flips at a time and not be shelling out monthly payments every month.
Right.
That makes sense.
For sure.
Oh yeah,
So-
definitely.
Another thing you mentioned was now you're passive. Like,
Mhm.
I know if I'm doing a fix and flip, I probably have 100 hours in that,
Easy.
in that deal, and I'm not even doing the work. Like, just finding it, negotiating, doing the scope of work. We're still in the thick of it. Like, we're
Very
very
much so.
active. And so, as a passive investor, like, if I brought you a deal like that, Chris, how much time do you have involved analyzing my deal and then sending me money for it?
Minutes, maybe an hour. Hour at most, yeah, and probably not even that long. I mean, it's because you kind of know what you're looking for after a while, right? Now, granted, if I do proper due diligence, like go and check out the area, because someone might say, "Oh, it's going to be the ARV is going to be this." Okay, let's make sure the ARV is real. It's not just some number they pulled out of thin air, right? They pull out their butt or something. Like, as I've seen people do that. Like, it's just like when even like turnkey rental companies. Like I now don't property manage companies. I'll go through a turnkey rental company to go buy a property anywhere in the country, right? If they're like, hey, we're going to collect this kind of rent, okay, let's go see what kind of rents are actually in that area. Because sometimes those turnkey companies will inflate that rent to the point you're like, this better be like a freaking class A plus neighborhood to get the command that kind of rent. Oh no, it's a B minus at best. That's not where.
The top of the market.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
over the market rent price. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, what tools do you use to analyze rents for an area?
A lot of times I might there's Zillow, although Zillow is kind of bad, but that's like an easy one that anybody can go to.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's things like Rentler, .com or like other kind of rental sites, depending on the area, right, where they might promote them. And I'll just look there like I'm a renter trying to rent a place and see what's on the market, like just going.
Great strategy. We use Rentometer a lot.
Oh yeah,
It works well in suburban and city areas, not so much for rural places.
Rural, yeah.
In the rural areas, we're really just checking Facebook Marketplace for rent.
Yeah,
and
that's
analyzing like everyone's posting on there what they're renting their places for. Apartments.com is another one that you can check.
The apartments.com. Finn sometimes has some information, but not very often. But sometimes, depending.
Yeah, that's another. It is something like Facebook Marketplace. See what kind of interaction there is too, because they might be something advertising, but there's like 0 people responding. Like, oh, that might be too high of rent, or they just have crappy pictures. It could be brave.
One of the
Don't worry, the Facebook members will tell you if you're
crappy renter.
Yeah.
Right.
And you'll be called you'll be called a lot of wonderful names. But that's another good strategy if you're new as well and you don't have a lot of time, but you have capital to invest. Like we tell our kids, that's the easiest way you can make money in real estate is being a private money lender.
Now that's all our son wants to do. I was kind of hoping that they would want to jump in and help, do all of the day-to-day stuff. And they're like, oh no, we don't want to do that.
Which they don't have a ton of capital. So what they'll do is they'll wait for a rehabber to get close to the end. And then they're short on some money to finish their project. And our kids will come in and loan them,
It's like a bridge loan.
Yeah, the last little bit of money they need to finish their place, and then their money isn't even loaned out for that long.
Yeah,
they're turning their money that way. So
smart. Yeah, that's definitely a way better way to do it for sure. If you're looking for the least risk possible, right? I'm gonna be the cleanup hitter instead of the one that's actually trying to get on first base to be the first one there, right? It's yeah. Well, you bring up some good points too, like. I here's the thing I realized, like when I was a financial advisor, none of this seemed possible, right? None of this even I didn't even know this existed. This whole alternative investment, mainstream investing game, because I was so focused on Wall Street. And the hard thing is that, you're always taught in financial advising, at least those that keep up the speed. There's some that teach lies like the 4% rule. I know even the FIRE movement talks about the 4% rule, the financially independent retire early. It's like, dude, if you're that young, it's a 2% rule, not a 4. Like that 4% was that, that 4% rule, so to speak. It wasn't even a rule in the beginning, but they've called it that, right? That 4% little rule of thumb, that thing came from 1974.
Yeah, so it's
1974.
It's clearly
out. Yeah. Because what the guy did, he took 1924 to 1974 in the stock market, ran all of the different variations and said, if you pulled out 4% a year, you should have always had money. But 74 is right about the same time we got switched off the gold standard and FIS and started going a lot faster. People now live longer, right? Like, so all that stuff is like just outdated crap that people just teach because it fits in their agenda, right?
correct.
It fits their narrative. But reality, it's 3% is probably the most you could do at retirement if you're like 60s, type of years old, right? Well, when I was thinking about it back then, I thought, well, if I can just save up and I can be cheap enough, I can save up at least $2 million living on 3%. I can live on 60,000 a year because 20 years ago, 5,000 a month sounded awesome. Sounded like a lifestyle.
Exactly.
Now we're like probably 12,000 a month today, maybe, right? Maybe 12 or 15. But I would have to save up that $2 million. Really, if I wanted to get that 12 to 15,000, I really need to save up more like closer to about $5 million in mutual funds to finally retire today. But when I realized like it's not about trying to live on less than the interest, like you're taught in the accumulation method. It's about the income method, right? The acceleration method, as I call it, which is, hey, wait, if I make even just 1% a month on $1 million, I'm now making $10,000 a month right now versus on that same $1 million, I'm making $30,000 a year, and then I have to pay taxes because I get crappy IRAs and 401ks with it, right? So, like, I'm not making anything. I might walk away with $2,000 a month versus $10,000 a month doing this, and that's what blew open my mind, like to the whole possibilities, and even just what you mentioned. When you talk, I mean, not even just lending my money. That was one strategy, but even like on the rental side, like I was arguing about appreciation. Well, there's other ways to make money on a rental other than appreciation, right? Because even if you take out the tax benefits, which are way better than stocks anyways, even if you take that out, you still have the fact that you get income, like actual income that could be, even right now with higher interest rates, you may not make 1% a month on it. You might be half that, maybe better. Yeah, it's still, you can have rental income paying you at least 6 to 12% a year, cash on cash returns.
Right.
Plus, they're paying down your mortgage for you if you bought it with leverage, with a mortgage. Plus, the appreciation gives you a multiplier effect because if you put 20% down on that property and it appreciates 10%, you don't make 10%. You make 5 times that because you only use 20% down. You make 50%, right? Because if that was a $100,000 property that you put $20,000 down on, it appreciates $10,000, right? 10%. You didn't make 10%. You made 10,000 on your 20. That's a 50% rate of return. And so I feel like that's properties like in Memphis, Tennessee, and places like that where I've seen like almost a 400% return in 6 years with between my cash flow, the debt pay down on my mortgage, the equity gain that's naturally going to happen anyways, and then appreciation too. I mean, the stock market in the same period of time has done just over 100%. And that's a really good time period for the stock market. That's better than average. It's better than average on the real estate side, but that's still quadruple what I would have made in the stock market, So I love it. I think real estate is a no-brainer. I think in the stock market, I'll be honest, even though I was a former stock trader, I drank the Kool-Aid and everything, I will still tell people stocks and mutual funds are crap. Like, yeah, they're easy to get in and out of, but once you realize there's this whole other option, it doesn't even make sense. And that's kind of what I've been preaching to people over and over. Even my Money Ripples podcast is like getting them to open their eyes and say, get away from the stupid company 401ks and putting your money away, lock it up forever in prison in your equity and in your IRAs and 401ks to where you can never get to it. Like, get that money out working for you now, create passive income now that you can count on. That's income today versus, in 40 years, I might have something, assuming this fake rate of return that I might or might not get.
Right.
Yeah.
I think your take on things is very interesting because you've played in both fields now, right? Like, you've been in the stock market and now you're in real estate. And there are a lot of people out there preaching, stock market is the way to invest. Like, so many so many people, as we know. But
Yeah.
and obviously there's a whole generation of people that think the stock market is the safe way to invest, and that's
Well, yes, they're 30s and younger. That's always the case because
right.
I mean, since 2009, we've only had one down year. That was in 2022. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that means 14 to 15 years have been up. But normally, even when I was a financial advisor, I teach about the Wall Street waltz, as they call it, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yep.
Usually for every 5 years it goes up, there's 2 years down. What does that mean? That means out of a 14-year period, right? That means you should have 4 years down, not 1. So we're already at least 3, maybe going on almost 4 years of market that should have gone down that hasn't. We are like massively overdue for a stock market crash. And the worst time to be in the stock market is when no one, and other than us in the real estate game, right? But when nobody in the media is telling you, hey, stock market is great, just stay in it. In fact, if it goes down, even better, it goes on sale. Basically, they never tell you to buy it. So notice it's never a bad time to not buy stocks, right? It's always a good time to buy stocks according to the financial institutions.
Correct.
Because that's how they get paid, right? Yeah. Think about it. When the market goes down, they say, well, buy more. It's on sale. Well, if that's the case, should I just wait for a market crash and that's the only time I ever buy stocks?
Right.
And then, because when it's going up, it's just getting more expensive. That's like buy high to possibly sell lower. Why would that? If I'm going to follow your dollar cost averaging advice, which is bull crap, I'm just going to wait for market crashes, wait for like a year or two after markets crash, and then say, cool, now I'll buy in.
Right.
And I'll probably make way more money than anybody who just throws it in all the time when it's always going up and getting more expensive.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you made an interesting point about infinite banking, and I know most people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So I would like to bring that up. So, just a grade 5 explanation of, what is infinite banking? How do you use it?
Yeah. So infinite banking is essentially a tax-free supercharged savings account that you can use to get your investment money to pay you twice. That's basically what it is. Crazy thing is they use life insurance to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
I first learned about this in 2006 when I was getting the real estate game, because all these real estate investors kept saying infinite banking, right? I was like, I don't even know what that is. And remember, I was a financial advisor for 4 years. And back then it wasn't as popular as it is today. Now it's trending more on social media and whatnot. But they didn't talk about infinite banking that much.
Right.
And so I'm like, what do you mean? And my friend, who of course was getting all the real estate training, was like, oh yeah, like you can get this whole life insurance policy and you can use it to become your own bank. Like you use that instead of using bank's money. I'm like, whole life insurance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whole life sucks. Why would anybody buy that?
Which is what we are taught, right? Honest to God, like, and you're talking life insurance, especially with an insurance agent, whole life is not the way to go ever. Like, you should totally do term. Totally.
No,
that's fine. So yeah,
like,
to hear whole life is the way to be an infinite banker, I was like, hold on.
They're like, come on, this is just another sales scheme, right?
Right.
But I was shocked that these real estate investors were all like, little fanboys about it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Why? And at first, I'll tell you, like, even the way it was set up and the way they had their setup, it actually sucked. It actually was the traditional whole life, but they just talked about infinite banking and how to use it that way. But you had to wait years before you had any cash in it. Right, here's the problem. Like, I ended up drinking the Kool-Aid. I still had an insurance license, by the way, but I got it through the guy that they were all recommending because I'm like, I don't know how to set these up, so you do it for me. And I remember looking at it saying, this is expensive. I have no cash in here in the first few years because for those who don't understand a whole life insurance, it's like it's got insurance death benefit, yes, like term insurance does, but it also has this tax-free savings account inside of it. That tax-free savings account in traditional whole life. See, whole life gets cheaper over time, or term gets more expensive over time, right? The typical insurance you buy gets more expensive every year you're alive.
Yeah.
Whole life insurance gets cheaper. It's front-loaded in its cost. So I'm looking at those first 2 years, 3 years, I'm like, dude, I have like no cash. I'm paying in like, $12,000 a year. And after even 2 years, I have zero. We're like, yeah, that's how it works. Like, okay, but well, can I manipulate the numbers like I used to do? Because I sold other insurances like variable universal life and index universal life, even before it was popular back in the day. Like, well, can I manipulate the numbers a little bit? He's like, no, you can't. You'll get taxed. Oh, I hate taxes, so let's not. Yeah. Well, of course, as you know, 2 years later, I'm going broke. I'm in the hole like $16,000 a month. I can't keep paying $12,000 a year, and there's no cash in it. So I had to let it go. I had to cancel it. And so $25,000 I paid into that policy and had zero to show for it. It was like the most expensive ripoff I'd ever bought.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just months later, I'm talking with another friend, and he said, and he bought a policy from the same guy, lost it as well because the recession hurt him too. He's like, hey, did you know you could put more money in these things? I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? It's like, yeah. And so I decided to do my own research. I did my own numbers. I started running my own things because, again, I had an insurance license. So I just started running my own illustrations and whatnot. And I found out the guy lied to me. So I confronted him about it. I confronted him. I said, listen, like, if I would have lowered the death benefit costs and done this and this, and I could still even have the same death benefit he was showing, but I would have cash in here from day one. I would have more money. I would never had to lose this policy. And finally, he just said, Chris, I just did it that way because I couldn't afford to cut my commissions. There's an honest answer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's honest.
Yeah, I mean, he was honest. I mean, he didn't shoot the bull at all. I mean, and that's why I trusted him because he was such an honest, just tell you as it is kind of guy.
Yeah.
But he didn't tell me that part. And so I was like, I'm never sending you a referral again because I sent friends and family to him, clients and everything. And I started doing it myself and tried to perfect it. And over the years, you got to the point where it's not like 100% of your money goes in those first 2 years. Then you might have like 80 or 85% of the money in there in those first 2 years. In fact, you'll have money in there from day one. Most of the cash you pay in goes in it from day one. And it pays for itself usually by about year 3. Right. So it's like free insurance by that point, and it's growing tax-free. It grows tax-free, comes out tax-free like a Roth, but you don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half to get to the money. You can access it right away, use it for whatever you want. There's no limitations, nothing like that. And I could keep all my real estate tax advantages that I get, right? Where if I put into an IRA, I lose that. But if I do, not to mention you worry about UBIT, all that kind of crap, but have that worry with this because I'm just using it like a savings account that pays me tax-free, but also 100% protection from lawsuits of creditors.
Yep.
And here's the cool thing is I can borrow money from the insurance company. This is where the infinite banking part comes in. They always try to teach you that either one, use this as a bill pay account, too much work, no returns, sucks. Don't do it. You're not paid enough for your time to do that kind of crap, especially when it's not worth it. Or then 2, hey, you can buy cars with this.
Yeah.
That's the thing, guys. As an investor, I love using banks' money, especially when it's cheap.
Right.
Here's the lie that they'll tell you on the infinite bank. If you've ever heard it before, the lie you'll see on social media is they'll say, you pay yourself back, right? You pay yourself back interest, right? Bold-faced lie. You do not pay yourself back interest. You pay the insurance company interest. You borrow from them. That's how it works. In fact, that's the magic. If it says, let's say you have $100,000 built up in cash in this tax-free savings account. Say you want to, you can actually withdraw $50,000, but what happens if we withdraw $50,000? You're now no longer earning interest, right? Because now that $50,000 goes down here. Just like if you pull out, $50,000 or $100,000 from your savings account, now you're making no interest, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what if you could leave the $100,000 all in there paying you interest, especially if it's tax-free and it's paying you more than the bank does at point nothing percent. You're making all this interest and you can still invest it too, making your money in 2 places at once.
Right.
That's why I borrow from the insurance company. And yes, they'll charge me interest and I pay them back the interest. Yes. But it's a line of credit that you can pay back however, whenever you want. There's no monthly payments. The deadline for paying it back is your death.
Right.
Yes. So think of this as a flipper, right? Because if you go get hard money, I'm not against hard money. Again, I love leveraging other people's money, banks' money, whatever money I can get cheap. I love it. But if I have to use cash, right? Even when I get a down payment on a property, I can't borrow that from the bank. They'll only give me the 80% or 75%.
Right.
But I can use this. I can borrow from the insurance company with my cash as collateral. They'll give me this loan. And I can use that money to put as down payment, right? Or I can use this money to go and start renovating the property and doing that kind of stuff. Well, I don't have to pay monthly payments like I would on a HELOC, right? This is like HELOC, right? So I don't have to pay back the money monthly. It does charge me interest during that period of time, but then I can take that money when I finally do the flip, pay it back, and then the line of credit's used, you can use it again. Just like if you paid off your HELOC, you can use it again.
Yep.
Or if you're like, well, you know what? Actually, I already have my next deal lined up. I need that cash right away. Well, then don't pay off the loan.
Right.
You don't have to.
And there's no coming out yet you either.
Yeah,
Let it ride, baby.
That's right. You can just let it ride. And so there's so much flexibility in how you can use it. And I'm not even going into half the details like I cover on my Money Ripples podcast channel from time to time. But it's once you understand how it works from the appropriate investor perspective, not the insurance agent, this is your retirement income at 65 or whatever crap. It's like, no, like I can use this to make a lot of money now because I will make more money now investing this in real estate or in my business. Or then if I do pay interest to the insurance company, I write it off anyways. Right?
Correct.
Yes.
Then I triple dip. In that case, they double dip. I can triple dip. by earning money 3 places at once that way. But yeah, I can do that kind of stuff, right? So it's just so much more flexible than just using a bank savings account where I get paid point nothing percent. And even then, if somebody sues me, that money is accessible. Like almost any account you can keep your money in, someone, if they sue you and win, they can get to it. But in here, with most states, with this life insurance, you could have millions of dollars stored in here. They cannot touch it. They cannot get to it at all. Now, that I already know why I say Lester right now that's being sued, and he's still putting in. He has hundreds of thousands of dollars built up in his policy because he knows that no one can get to that money there. So that's his like family's money.
Yeah. That's a huge point to it. And it's funny because we actually just did this a couple of months ago. We borrowed from our life insurance policy. At the time, the bank investor rate was actually 9%.
Yeah, it was crazy.
When the rates were a little bit higher, and our rate with our insurance company was like 6.25%.
Yeah,
That's right. Exactly.
And
Much
like you
cheaper
said,
than
no monthly payment due.
Right.
Yeah.
Pay it back whenever you want.
Whenever you feel like it. Yep. I mean, granted, like if you really want it to work, yeah, pay it back, right? Like these only payments.
is to pay it.
I want to pay it back.
Yeah, but it's so nice to know that you have that flexibility, right? Like you're not forced to make payments. Not to mention it doesn't show up in your credit report, so it doesn't. Heck, you could have a 480 credit score, and you could still get lines of credit doing this because they know. And the reason they'll do this is because the insurance companies know that they're guaranteed to always pay out. Because here's the minimum you're going to get paid on is at least 3 or 4% a year. And I use insurance companies that have paid literally for over 175 years straight above their minimum.
Yeah.
So always pay. They have better track records than banks do. And it's funny because you and I, we were at a mastermind. I don't know if you were in this breakout room, but one of our friends, Ron, right, was like, I've got money with Chase. It's been sitting in here and I got millions in here and they don't even give a crap about me anymore. Like I'm sick and tired of Chase. Where else can I put my money? And everybody's like saying, well, you could do a high yield savings account, do this and this. I'm like, Ron, you're already a client of mine. You already have one of these set up. If you know what, put it.
Use it the way you should.
He's like, you're right. He's like, dude, I'm going to do it. And he set up another policy, like to stuff in more money to get it away from the banks. Cause he's like, I don't trust the banks right now because we don't know if they're going to start failing because they're already laying off workers. You know, that's a problem. They're doing a lot of layoffs right now. But they're making it sound like everything's fine. You're just correcting and adjusting. It's like, no, you're screwed. And you're just not wanting to say it because then everybody will start tanking your stock and then you're really screwed.
Then you're really screwed. Exactly.
Exactly right.
So that's interesting that you found out about that in 2006. We used that system like we already mentioned, but we didn't hear about it that early because we hadn't heard about it like until 2011 or something like that, I think.
Yeah. About 10 years ago, I just came across Nelson Nash's book and because I was reading a lot. And that's how I discovered it was that book.
Yeah. And that's how the Rockefellers, I believe, is how they started their big investment in their family business. And that's how a lot of big named millionaires, billionaire type people invest. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My former business partner, the one that we almost went broke with, he actually wrote a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know about the Rockefeller concept because we use the same estate planning attorney for that. By the way, the estate plan is the secret, not the life insurance. But the life insurance helps, right?
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Like GE, like General Electric, they actually use this on their employees. They would actually buy life insurance on their employees' whole life, right? And then they build up that cash, and then they would use the cash to pay the pensions. But here's the cool thing. Well, cool, not so cool. Eventually, when the employees die, where's that death benefit go? Back to the company to replenish the pension fund again, right?
Okay.
So they were brilliant. Which is basically like infinite banking, right? It's like if you go multi-generational, right? That's how infinite banking or that Rockefeller concept works is that you build it up, you can use the cash to pay while you're alive, but then when the death benefit comes in, it helps replenish those funds so that the estate can keep growing, pension fund or estate plan or whatever can keep growing. That's kind of the family banking concept that goes there. But you're right, like Walt Disney. I mean, Walt Disney, so many documentaries and books, you'll hear him say he leveraged a home equity line of credit and his life insurance cash value to build Disneyland because the banks would not lend him the money for this alcohol-free park, which was unheard of at the time, right? It's like, I'll go to an amusement park with no alcohol. That sounds ridiculous. Yeah, the banks say, if you put more money up, then we'll do it. So he's like, all right, my home and my life insurance cash, I'll put up as equity. They gave him the loan and the rest is history. Now we got the happiest place on earth, right? So So many people use, and even if you've ever used Pampered Chef, the seed money for Pampered Chef came from using her life insurance.
Oh, nice. I
Okay.
didn't know that. Yeah. That's
Very
awesome.
cool. Hey, Chris, what are a couple of books that you would recommend to people that are looking to invest in real estate or just starting? And that could be real estate or even, to me, like mindset is 80% of this game.
For sure.
So even anything mindset related.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to recommend the typical rich dad, poor dad because everybody recommends that, right? But I mean, that's just a prerequisite. You got to have that even before you listen to the show. Dang it, no. I mean, the cash flow quadrant I think is a good one for sure. Another one. I'm trying to think. I got so many jumble in my head right now. I mean, but you're definitely right. The mindset is the big key thing here.
Or how do you keep your mindset in the right space? Like, what are some of the habits that you do to
Because
do that?
as entrepreneurs, you always kind of get into a funk at some point in your career, I feel like. And it could be happening slowly or it could happen all at once or whatever the case may be. So,
Well, a lot of it's because I teach the mindset now. Like that's like really a requirement for making this all work, right? Because if you don't have the right mindset, none of it works. I mean, so beyond the rich dad stuff, which of course are great, I would say like, what is it? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's what it is.
Stephen Covey.
Yeah, Stephen Covey. There's a great section in there about scarcity and abundance. I'll tell you, an abundance mindset, you need to study that. Like that's such an important thing to learn.
I agree.
There's also another one as well. Like if you really go deep into some like financial philosophies that have gone through the ages, there's one called "Thou Shalt Prosper" by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. So kind of from the Jewish perspective of money, because obviously like they're always known to like have lots of money through the ages, right?
Right.
What is it that how do they see money differently than what most people do?
Right.
Why do they not see it as evil, right? And that kind of thing. So that's a good book as well. I actually interviewed him on my podcast. The guy is brilliant. He's
Awesome.
Rabbi, what was it?
Daniel Lapin, like Lapin. So "Thou Shalt Prosper" is the name of the book.
Okay.
I haven't read that really, so I'm taking some notes too. Like,
Get it or investor. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. So I mean, there's lots of good stuff there. But I mean, that's why I teach a lot on my podcast. I guess nowadays it's where I just keep building on what I've already learned.
Yeah.
And that's why I teach that on my Money Ripples podcast a lot because everyone wants the strategy, which is you got to have the strategy, but you got to have the philosophy to support it. Otherwise,
yes.
Like if you're a gambler when you go into this, just like I was, right? Like I was kind of gambling in the real estate game in the beginning. So it worked until it didn't, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then when it didn't work, it was hard because I took so many higher risks that when I came back around out of it the next time, after getting past the PTSD of trauma of losing. By the way, the first time I bought my house, it was almost the same price as the house that I bought in 2006.
Oh.
I had this little panic moment. My wife had to talk me off on the ledge because I was like, "Wait a minute, what if it happens again?" She's like, "You're not in the same financial position. You're in a better financial position now than you were then. Chill." So it's actually look to see if you went.
Definitely a thing.
Oh yeah, that PTSD is big, and so yeah. Once I got back into it, it was so much easier, to learn. But I made sure that this time around, I was going to do smarter and wiser. Right? I was not going to take those high risks. And as an investor, if you're trying to do anything, like you never ever believe that high risk creates high returns. A 90% chance of losing does not equal a 90% chance of winning. Right? 80% chance of losing means you have a 10% chance of winning. You're going to believe that.
True story.
Statement. That's so ridiculous. The only people that teach you high risk create high returns are the financial companies because they want you to take all the risk while they take the guaranteed fees out of your money.
Right.
True.
If it were high risk, if they thought high risk creates high returns, what they would say is, "Hey, how about you put your money together and I'll put my money in, and then we'll both put our money in the stock market. And if I lose, you lose. It's all good."
Everybody
We're not
loses. Right.
Yeah. So what's a great way for everyone to connect with you, Chris?
It's down at.
Yeah. Besides the Money Ripples podcast, you can always go to moneyripples.com. We got lots of stuff on there, everything from infinite banking to even have a passive income calculator. Like if you have capital, you're like, what if I just want to do something with this? Not like $10,000, but you're like, I got hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe I want to do some passive investing. We actually have a passive income calculator that can tell you pretty accurately how much passive income you could create in the next 12 months.
Awesome.
That's cool, man.
Well, it was great to talk to you. I learned a bunch of stuff And then we found out that we have a lot of stuff in common that I didn't realize either. So that's cool.
Yes, and I have a new book to read now. So that's so cool, man. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. And definitely reach out to Chris, get on his website, check out his podcast is amazing. You'll get tons of value out of it. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on, man.
Definitely.
Hey everybody, it's Jay.
This is Annie.
We are so grateful for you joining us on our podcast and listening in and participating. We want to offer you this additional free bonus, and that is joining our Facebook group.
Yes, where we will have other individuals, not just us, but having conversations on all things real estate, and we would love to have you join us. So just click the link below and head on over and join our group.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the other side.